Oh, no.
What?
Don't believe it. What?
I don't think it's any secret that Deep Space Nine is my favorite in the franchise, with the exception of the original series, Star Trek. Deep Space Nine, to me, had more solid characters, a better story. The script seems to be more realistic to me than Next Generation, Voyager, and even Enterprise. But the thing that this video is about Miles Edward O'Brien, Chief of Operations for DS9. And an article that came out talking about an issue that they're trying to do to him. They're trying to retcon him in a comic book. And I have a problem with this, and it really needs to be discussed because, once again, modern day agendas, modern day politics, or as some people would have called it, the woke agenda, is infiltrating its way into our beloved Star Trek, and I have something to say about this.
Self-replication. That's the only answer.
Self-replication?
If the mines are going to be small, we'll need a lot of them. And we'll need a way to replace them quickly if the Jem'Hadar try to blast their way through. And
Equip each mine with a replicator unit.
No matter how many the Jem'Hadar destroyed, there'd always be more.
We program them to swarm detonate.
After the war is over, Miles will be taking a transfer. He'll be going to Starfleet Academy as a professor of engineering, teaching young cadets the do's and don'ts of engineering. And in an article that I found today, it talks about him being questioned by one of his trainees or students. He will be labeled, get this, as a war criminal. Do you believe that, right? We're in the middle of a war. Lives, Federation lives are being lost. The Dominion is out to conquer the Alpha Quadrant. And this student has the brass to question the validity of a plan that he didn't come up with. Rom did. He just came up with some ideas to help improve it. But his student will now accuse him of being a war criminal? Now, the article comes from Red Shirts Always Die. The Star Trek comic tries to retcon Miles O'Brien into a war criminal. Do you believe it? How stupid is this? This is one of the reasons why I really don't talk about the Star Trek comics from IDW that much on this channel, because they just don't. They do a good job of trying to tear down and rewrite characters. And I just don't like it. I'm so sick and tired of rewriting classic characters because we have to fit the modern day audience. Well, excuse me if I say, screw all of you, leave these characters alone. But let's get into the article. Star Trek Deep Space Nine remains one of the most iconic and well-written stories in all of Star Trek. Against any series or film, Deep Space Nine is always mentioned as one of the best pieces of Star Trek in the history of the franchise. Again, my favorite. I think the story was great, the characters were well developed, and they seemed more realistic than a lot of the other characters. It was sincere and earnest, and it dove deep into issues that people wanted. It was an incredible piece of work. Again, completely agree. But here's where we start having problems. We can't always say the same thing for what came recently. However, fans are becoming fed up with Star Trek as it moves further and further away from the moral stage play it was always intended to be. It's been hacked up, dissected, and rearranged to look everything other popular things. It's been rearranged to look like every other popular thing. It no longer feels like its own. It feels like a cheap ripoff of the Guardians of the Galaxy or Rick and Morty. It no longer has a sense of self, and I completely agree. Lower Decks is a clear case of that, and so is, and I know people argue with me on this, but so has the entire seasons, all the series run of Discovery, the first 2 seasons of Picard, and on and off, the Strange New Worlds. It's not the Star Trek we all knew and loved. it's become somewhat of a watered-down version of itself. You know, it still amazes me that writers today, whether it be in comic books, television, or film, are going out of their way to try and rewrite history and tear down classic heroes that we all love. What is the obsession with doing this? Why can't you just tell good stories without trying to punish heroes from the past? Not only are they trying to tear down O'Brien, they do a good job in the past comics or the previous issues. In one particular comic set, Worf stole the Defiant and recruited Lore, of all people, and Spock. Lore and Spock on the same ship with Worf. That just doesn't seem to work well for me. But my real problem, again, is the constant rewriting of history just so we can fit the younger audience and the modern agenda, which I'm happy to say is slowly starting to die off. But I would love to know your thoughts and comments on this. Do you think that IDW should be continuously writing stories that tears down legacy characters? I mean, I know in our film and television that just seems to be a regular trend, but this needs to stop. This really does, because if we don't have heroes to look up to, then what's the point? I don't get it. We need people to look up to and admire and inspire to be better than who we are before. People like Miles O'Brien, who started out at one end and worked their way up through a whole mess of obstacles to become a better person. These are the type of stories that I love to hear. And unfortunately, when you get stories like, oh, well, he's a war criminal, that's a bunch of nonsense, and I just don't want to hear it. So again, drop your comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments, my friends. Drop them below and let me know. And until the next time, my friends, God bless.